Welcome to Beyond Adjustments, the podcast where chiropractic care meets heart, humor, and the occasional dad joke. And I apologize in advance for those. But I'm your host, Amin Saeed, and today we're joined by the one and only Dr. Joshua Collingsworth. Dr. Josh, well, his journey started after a car accident. It left him skeptical about searching for answers. And spoiler alert, guys, chiropractic care won him over, and now he's making a huge impact, helping families from expectant moms to energetic kids just feel their best. Well, today we'll dive into his inspiring story, hear some amazing patient transformations, and even learn how he gets kids on the autism spectrum to feel right at home in his practice. So, sit back, crack a smile, pun fully intended, and let's get rolling. Intro time. Dr. Josh, welcome. Thank you so much for joining me today on the show.
Yeah, thank you for having me. This is such an honor. I'm excited.
The honor is all mine, my friend, all mine. So, Dr. Josh, I mentioned in the intro about something that sparked your journey here, right? So chiropractic care began with a personal health struggle after a car accident, right? Could you share more about that experience and how it shaped your career path?
Yeah, absolutely. Any person in college doesn't truly know what they want to do. I mean, if you are, then you're probably the exception. But, I was kind of on my trajectory. I knew that I was going to be in healthcare. I knew that I wanted to help people. In fact, the healthcare that I was thinking about going into was being a pararescue jumper in the Air Force. So it's more like combat care, right?
Yeah.
And so, when that kind of got taken away, then I was like, okay, I'm left with, maybe becoming an ortho or, some kind of sports med doc. And, being an avid, CrossFitter at the time, lacrosse player at the time, very into fitness, it was kind of my, 100% goal and ambition was to work with athletes. And, as being an athlete, that was what I wanted to do. So, unfortunately that completely got derailed, when I was home, summer break. I was going to pick up a friend for a movie and got into a 5-car pileup where I was the front car. Yeah. I mean, I, at the time, drove a little bitty Mazda 3 and, so I was rear-ended, 4 times over. And what it did was not only, it messed my back up, but I didn't realize it was a back issue because I was actually having like groin pain. And I literally, I just, I tried everything under the sun. I was doing PT. I was doing, massages and, going to all these docs and getting pain meds and muscle relaxers. And, I'm sitting there in the middle of summer. And, my dad and I are just looking at each other and I'm just like, I'm still in pain. I feel it. I can't run. I'm probably gonna have to redshirt, right? There's just no fixing this pain. And so finally he just looks at me. He's like, well, what about my chiropractor? And literally at when he said that, I think I rolled my eyes about 15 times over because I'm just like, okay, that's going to be some weird guy in a closet space that thinks he's a doctor, right?
Voodoo dolls.
And, yeah. And I'm like, well, what is he going to do for me? And he's like, well, you've tried everything else. And I was like, that indeed is true, right? So I decided to go. And, in that first visit, I'll never forget it. I'm sitting there rolling my eyes. I don't really want to be there. I don't feel like he can help me, before I even knew anything. And he could tell, that I was a little apathetic, that I was just a little bit like, can you really help me?
Right.
And so he kind of struck a deal with me, and this is me in my college years, right? So I know it all. And, he's just like, I tell you what, Josh, he's like, if I don't have you, some percent better, marginally better, in a few weeks, he's like, I will gladly help you find solutions
Mm-hmm.
to your problems, right? Elsewhere.
Sure.
I was like, all right, fair shake, 6 weeks. That's what he told me was 6 weeks. I was like, I'm here for 10. So that gives me 4 until I go back to school. And he explained the x-rays, he explained the nervous system, and I'm still kind of rolling my eyes. I'm like, okay, we'll see.
Yeah.
Well, in 2 weeks, he had me completely better. I mean, I was feeling magnificent. I was sleeping great. And he did a mix. He was doing acupuncture and also chiropractic.
Oh, okay.
And so that was really cool because as I was starting to feel better, it started sparking my interest. I'm like, you're doing this with your hands, but you're also using acupuncture and talking to me about the nervous system and energy. And I was like, there's something to this because I'm a big skeptic of most things. And, this is working for me.
Yeah.
And I'm feeling better than I did before my accident. And I need to know what this is. Sparked my interest enough to where I actually ended up shadowing him and for the rest of the summer and like seeing him work with other patients. And it sparked me enough to be like, you know what, this is what I want to do with my life because he changed my life without drugs, without surgery, without medications, without any of that.
Yeah.
And I want to do that for other people. And so that's kind of what sparked my journey into chiropractic. And I was fortunate enough to get into Palmer College of Chiropractic down in Port Orange, Florida. And
familiar.
And then, during that, I literally, I think I thought I knew what chiropractic was, like, oh, snap, crackle, pop, right? Kind of what you're taught in school. It's like, okay, we're helping neck pain and back pain and headaches and all of the things. And then I realized that there's way more to it because I thought I was just going to work with like Navy SEAL, like we're in a heavy Navy area in Virginia Beach. So the SEAL community's here, Navy SEALs. We've got a lot of military, firefighters, first responders. And I was like, yeah, I'm going to work with CrossFit athletes, Navy SEALs, help them get out of pain, help them kick butt. And I do, and I still do, and I did. But I realized that there's a deeper implementation of chiropractic. When we started getting into the neurology of things, now we're starting to cook with, how are we actually affecting neurology and getting people not only out of pain, but getting their nervous systems to be a little bit more regulated. And that plays a huge factor into the populations that we see now. We still see adults, but we also see a ton of children.
I love that.
And that's kind of how this all came to be, which is a long story, but kind of an interesting one too.
No, not long enough. Let me tell you, because I got some follow-ups. So you were talking about the skepticism. I think we're all skeptics, right?
For sure.
And sometimes we're fully trusting of certain areas, and some things they're just not the norm, right?
Right.
And we're just skeptical of it. So how would you say that your initial skepticism? Obviously, you gave in. You're like, all right, fine, we'll give it a try.
Yeah.
But about chiropractic care, how do you think that evolved? Like into this kind of I could see it, I could hear it in your voice. This deep passion, right, that you have for helping others.
For sure.
Through your practice. How did that kind of evolve?
Yeah, I mean, kind of like what I was saying. When you're in college, you kind of know it all. That you can't really be told a whole lot.
Yeah.
And I think, maturity plays a factor in that. But I do think in terms of chiropractic and my skepticism, I mean, really and truly, when you think about you kind of being on your last chance, essentially, right? For me, I was in pain. I had tried everything. Nothing was really working for me.
Yeah.
And, something was taken away from me that I really loved doing. And that was being able to run, being able to work out, right?
Wow.
And being able to just be fit and active.
Yeah.
And I also love sleeping, right? So, being able to sleep without pain, right? Instead of having pain when you toss and turn. So when that's taken from you, I think you kind of reach a point where it's like, I can't do the thing that I love. So I'm willing to do anything to get that back.
Yeah.
And for me, it was, okay, well, I don't know much about chiropractic because it's not being spoken about very much. And then when I went in there, it was how he educated me. He was a very fit guy too. So that was also kind of a win in his column, was like, you could tell he embodied health, right? He looked fit. He spoke, he was clean shaved guy. I mean, he was a very nice, presentable man and in his like late 50s, early 60s at the time. And so, that kind of piqued my interest. I'm like, okay, he already looks fit and he's talking about fitness, but it was also how he handled me being a young, at the time, 20-some-year-old male.
Yeah.
He spoke to me about, well, if this is your end goal, I'm going to help you get there. So it was all about how he kind of taught me and educated me on chiropractic, and he didn't make it weird. He made it very practical. And so I was drawn to that. And I think, I'm a why person, cool. You could tell me the sky is green. I'm not going to believe you, but if you can explain why, right?
Yeah.
Then, we have a fighting chance. So that being said, I think that he was willing to sit down and answer all the questions, even some of the cynical ones. And I think that for me was one, a lesson, in how to communicate with people. But two, also, I valued how he did it. And so that's one of the things that I bring into my office is we are big on education, because unfortunately, there's not a lot of education as to what chiropractic is. A lot of people think they know, right? They'll see the YouTube video, or they'll see the TikToks or the Instagrams, but they don't truly know. And so education is a massive, massive portion for us in this office. So I think that kind of helped develop my a little bit more like understanding of chiropractic, which took away my doubt, which, obviously it led me here. So
I love it. I'm, and this isn't about me, but just real quick, I kind of had a similar situation. I wasn't in college or anything, but I had an accident that I literally ended up with a cane. And it was I wasn't even that huge, but I felt like I couldn't do it. And it was chiropractic care that literally got me back on my feet. I was on meds. You name it, like the whatever they prescribed, I took. They pumped me. I was like, this can't be it. Like,
right.
It literally changed my life. But okay, $1 million question.
Yep.
What would you say to somebody who's skeptical, like both you and I once were?
Sure.
About chiropractic care? Like, what would be the one thing that you would tell a skeptic of chiropractic care?
Great question. I think the one thing that I would tell them is, when choosing healthcare, ask yourself two questions. Why are they doing what they do? Meaning, what's their why? Because if you kind of think about the whys of a lot of different healthcare professions, it's really not you. It's money. Okay. Second one would be, make sure, if you're going to go down the chiropractic route, that they have a nervous system focus. So that would be, and then also, doing education, right? So I know you said one thing, $1 million question, $1 million questions, right? I think, really boiling it down, because in my area, a lot of people, they have gone to other chiros and mixed results. Some are good, some are bad, some are not, some are great, But that being said, everyone can rally behind you work on the nervous system, and that's your focus, and that's driving my discomfort. That's driving my dis-ease. That's driving whatever condition I'm coming in for. I can get behind that.
I love it. Well, I really appreciate you kind of getting into the personal side of it and telling us your story. That means a lot. Thank you.
Absolutely.
It takes a lot to open up. So that's good stuff. Good stuff. So let's get into a little bit of the patient care, maybe a success story or two. So your practice focuses on family care, right?
It does,
From pediatric to prenatal, and you touched a little bit on that during your story. But what inspired you to shift? And I think at one point you mentioned sports chiropractic. To this holistic, family-oriented approach. What inspired that?
Sure. Yeah. So coming out of chiro school, coming out of Palmer, I came back to my hometown of Virginia Beach, and I worked in a pain clinic. I worked in a chiro office where literally we were dealing neck pain, back pain, headaches over and over and over. And so we did disc decompression. We did chiropractic adjustments. We did even like some soft tissue work, on athletes and stuff like that. The biggest thing that changed my perspective was actually having my second child. So my first child was a pretty smooth birth, no major issues under chiropractic care while I was in chiropractic school. My second one, very different story. Jude, my now 5-year-old, had a terrible time. My wife at the time labored for hours, almost an entire day. It was a cord wrapped around his neck kind of situation. And it really was just a very traumatic thing. And I know this now, I didn't know it then, but that made or set the stage for all the struggles that he would have. And that was colic and irritability and constipation, which then turned into behavior issues at school. And when he got kicked out of his school at 2 years old, and I go to the pediatrician and he says, well, we need to, 1, medicate him, and 2, he needs to go to some type of, play therapy or what have you. I said, I'll agree with the therapy.
Yeah.
We're not medicating my child.
Yeah. That's good. I love that.
And so that's when, we always find kind of our true path or what we're meant to do from the adversities that we face, I believe. And so that being said, I did some deep diving, and I was fortunate enough to find Pediatric Prenatal Family Chiropractic through now my mentor, Dr. Tony Ebel, with the pediatric experience. And as I'm starting to dive into this stuff, and I'm like, oh my gosh, that's my child. He is a raging bull. He literally he goes 0 to 100, in about 5 seconds. And he is hitting kids and throwing things and having tantrums and was colicky and was irritable. This was his birth story. I'm like, this is my child. And so I really started I dove head first because I wanted the care initially for my son. And that transferred into, well, if he's experiencing this, there are other kids who are doing the same thing. They must be having very similar situations. And so my whole focus, my whole identity in chiropractic was, okay, I'm not saying I'm not going to treat back pain and headaches and migraines, because we definitely still do, but it really needs to be geared more toward families and starting kids out with a great start. And that starts with perinatal care, and then pregnancy care, and then pediatric care. And that's how we start really making that massive shift of health in communities. And being in the community that I grew up in, that's my biggest focus, is I want to shift and change the trajectory of health in Virginia Beach and beyond. So it really was out of desperation for, at the time, my wife and I, really trying to figure out what's going to work for our son, that really kind of catapulted us into this pediatric prenatal family world. And it couldn't happen, 1, at a better time. 2, it couldn't happen any better because we are, literally becoming known as the pediatric chiropractors of the area, which is awesome. So
that's so awesome.
Yeah.
Love it. I love it. Wow. Okay. So could you then share with me maybe a story of how the care you provide transformed one of your patients' lives? It could be, a child, a mom, but something that deeply resonated with you.
Sure.
You're probably going to jump into maybe your son's story. That's what I'm going to assume, but go for it. I love it.
Yeah. I mean, my son's story, again, it's no different than what a lot of people go through. It's, a lot of uncertainty, right? Starting with, the day we find out we're pregnant, with our second child.
Sure.
It's like, okay, everyone hand us that book, like what to expecting. And if you've ever read that book, it's literally like the Stephen King novel of all things pregnancy. And it's kind of ironic that we give moms and dads that book, because it just is kind of traumatic. But that being said, so, there's a lot of uncertainty. There's not a whole lot of education when it comes to, birth plans. There's not a lot of education as to what are your options for birthing a child. There's not a whole lot of education as to, looking at, even talking about, in vaccines or whatever. There's just not a whole lot of that going on, right?
Yeah.
And so I think for us, having gone through this experience, it really kind of tied into the why of what I do. And so, my son's story was like many others, traumatic, kind of traumatic pregnancy with a traumatic birth, with a kind of traumatic infant, right? So sleepless nights, we're both kind of at our wits' end because we already had a son that, is, we're trying to take care of, and we're trying to take care of this newborn. And so it was very, very chaotic.
Yeah.
And once I found pediatric chiropractic, it changed. It changed everything. I mean, it changed how he was sleeping. It changed how he was digesting food, holding food down. He was no longer constipated. His behavior started shifting.
Yeah.
And, kids are going to still be kids. It doesn't make them robots, but what I noticed was like, man, what a massive shift in a year's time for my son Jude. And quite honestly, I was like, I've got to do this for other people. So we had a kiddo, and he was on the spectrum. He has since moved away. He lives in North Carolina now. And so we love this family. So this guy came in and, you know, he was at the time 5 years old and, you know, extremely sensory, a behavior issue at school. So he was labeled with autism. Okay. And so, and we do a really good job about not using labels in our office.
Yeah.
But he was labeled with autism. So we do a lot of patient education, as I kind of mentioned earlier. And we were talking to mom. We did a phone consult because they were traveling up from the Outer Banks, and we live in Virginia Beach. So they were traveling an hour and a half, closer to 2 each way, every visit. And so we did a phone consult where I talked to mom, and it was just like, hey, you know, kind of walk me through what's going on. And she gave me kind of a litany of things that he was doing. And it instantly resonated with me because that was my son. My son was that kid. And I kind of had a moment where I got emotional, but then, you know, panning back into professional, I was like, I believe that we can help him. And here's why.
Yeah.
We do these insight scans that actually assess nervous system function. And if your child, based on his birth story, based on his story at, you know, 0 years old, all the way up to now 4, 5, 6 years old, he's had trauma. He's had systemic overwhelm. He wasn't sleeping as an infant, and he's still not sleeping as a 4-year-old. Kids should be doing 3 major things really, really well, and that's eating, sleeping, and pooping. And so she was like just in tears. I could hear it over the phone, and also so excited because she had just been given, you know, hey, this is the diagnosis, and there's not really much you can do about it. It's ABA therapy, it's OT, it's speech, it's all these things. And she really wasn't giving answers. And so, you know, they ended up coming to our office and doing a care plan with us and watching the transformation of Walker. I mean, it was just absolutely amazing. He literally went from a kid that couldn't really sit still to now he's actually interacting with kids. He's not parallel playing. He's playing with kids. He's interacting with adults and kids. You know, he's eating food, he's sleeping, and he's just such a well-regulated kid. And so watching parents, you know, kind of reap the benefits of that. I mean, it does. It gives you chills. I mean, it's literally like one of the situations is like, why isn't this being spread far and wide? And so it truly is my life's mission and my life's purpose to spread this message far and wide. Because honestly, more parents need to know about this. I mean, my mentor, Dr. Tony Ebel, he's got the pediatric experience. They're doing great. They've got podcasts. They've got, you know, e-letters and stuff going out. They're all over social media. It's great. But we need more people kind of, you know, shouting from the mountaintops. And that's what we're doing, you know, and that's our mission is kids first. And then, you know, obviously, you know, parents usually come in after that. They're like, okay, cool. That worked for my kid. Now I need the care too.
Yeah.
I'm stressed.
My turn.
I'm stressed. I'm anxious.
Move over. Yeah. My turn. I get it. Oh my God. Yeah, that's good. That's good. So, okay. So I have 2 kids of my own. I know what it's like.
Sure.
I have 3. One is in heaven right now, unfortunately, but that's a long story for another day. Thank you. So I know what it's like to deal with kids.
Yeah.
I also have very close friends who have autistic children. Actually, my godson is autistic as well. So I see it. I don't live it on a day-to-day, but I see it. I see what it takes to, you know, the patience you need. The approach is different, right? So I understand that piece as much as I can, at least, right?
Sure.
I'm not being in it on a day-to-day basis. But so how do you make children, especially those that are, again, right, labeled on the autism spectrum, how do you make them feel comfortable and really supported during their treatment?
Yeah. No, great question. I mean, kids are naturally intuitive. I mean, they read their environment and they're perceiving their world, whether they're on the spectrum or whether they're, you know, ADHD or whether they're, you know, just hyperactive, you know, or just being kids, right? Yeah. It doesn't matter. Kids are very, very perceptive, and it all is about your approach. You know, you have to have an environment built for them. There's a lot of chiros that, you know, on their website, they say they're a kid-friendly practice. They say that they treat children, but they're not set up that way, right? In our office, we have really kind of a 3-step approach. We first talk to mom and dad over the phone. So we get kind of an idea of what's going on with them. And then we have them come in and we give them an office tour, right? We have a play area built just for them where, they can play with toys. We have, stuff like Legos for, kids who are into that. But we also have things where they can do it in quiet, right? At a small desk that's off to the side for maybe our sensory kids who, don't do well with others, or maybe noise kind of, overwhelms them, or, crowds overwhelm them. So the first thing is you have to have the right environment set up for them, right? I think the second component is all about your energy and how you come across, right? If I have a sensory kiddo, right, and I'm talking about autism at this point, but we have kids, all over the map, right? We have kids who just have soccer injuries from the weekend, and we've got kids who, are ADHD or whatever.
Sure.
But if I have a kiddo who is a little bit more reserved, like trying to, and I joke, literally trying to crawl back into mom, right? Like they want her as a security blanket, or dad, right? If we have a kiddo that is, that kind of sensory adverse or sensory avoidant, we can't just come and like put our hands on them, right? We have to be very warm. We've got to play with them, right? If they're on the floor, I will get on the floor and we'll have a conversation, and I will be very backed off.
Yeah.
Because you can't invade their security space, right? And so, fortunately I have I've got some background in working with special needs populations, and as does the majority of my staff. But at the same time, it's all about your approach and your delivery, and it's about your environment. We have a office that is a beautiful office where we have lights that are dimmable for more sensory kids. We have noise machines. We've got, salt lamps, and we've done an exam kind of in a dark room before with just like one little lamp off in the distance because of a sensory issue. So you have to be readily able to adapt to whatever walks into your office and make them feel comfortable. You have to make the experience for them, and not just walk into they can't just walk into a very sterile, bright environment and they're going to feel welcome and comfortable. That's just not the way it works. And so we try to take every accommodation that we can. We have snacks for the kids. That usually works more often than not.
I like snacks.
Yeah, exactly. Kids love pretzels and things of that nature. But and so my staff, they've been highly, highly trained on how to work with these kids. And there's been times where we've done an entire scan and exam on the floor. There's been times where we have 2 of us in there and one's kind of playing with the kid while the other one's kind of, palpating and scanning and doing what we need to do to get, a care plan built. So it really it takes a team, and it takes a team that their whole mission is to serve these families and serve these kids, because we got to remember, these are the populations that people kind of write off a little bit. Yes, there's therapies and stuff like that, but these moms and dads, they're scrolling social media at night, trying to find answers, trying to find hope. And, for a lot of them, we're that answer for them.
I love it. Yeah. I love it. So for patient care and these success stories, I want to leave it with this. I have another one of those $1 million questions for you. So what's the most rewarding aspect of helping families achieve, better health through the care that you provide, Dr. Josh?
I think for me personally, what keeps me going and what gets me up in the morning, and I get to say, man, I get to go to work, not I have to go to work, I think for me is seeing the radical transformations in these children. And when you alter a child's neurology, you also alter a family dynamic. A lot of times parents will come in and they've got the big bags under their eyes, right? They look drained. Their mom and dad are kind of like looking at each other like, can't stand you right now because I'm so tired.
Yeah.
I think the part that I love is watching kids go from completely dysregulated and unhealthy to a place of regulation, healthy, sleeping, eating. Mom and dad are having a much better experience. Because I've had moms come in and say, if I knew it was going to be this hard, I wouldn't have done it. And that's hard as a parent, to admit. But two, as me, as a parent and a provider, that's hard for me to hear because children are such a blessing, but I understand it, because again, it's not easy being a parent, but, at the same time, you're also a human. And so I think, seeing how much change happens for these kids and what that does to a family dynamic, you start creating healthy families, you start developing healthy communities. And that's the coolest part about my job is, when people come in, I just, the other day, had a patient, severe autism on the spectrum. Mom came in and just so much happiness because they had just come back from Chicago from Thanksgiving. And she was like, she did so well on the plane. And that normally wouldn't have been a thing, or, having a mom, come in and say, my child is able to focus on homework and focus at school. And the guidance counselor is like, what are you doing? Or, hey, my child's able to play with other kids, or, hey, my child is just sleeping, it's sometimes the simple things that we overlook. Right. So it's those changes that are just like, man, this is why we do what we do. And we have weekly team meetings where we go over wins every week because it's hard work. It's a labor of love. But at the same time, you've got to keep those wins, in the forefront because they happen every day. We have a saying here, expect miracles because they happen every day. And that's awesome.
Such a good saying.
Yeah.
My son's specialist, well, I don't know why I did air quotes. He is a specialist. He's in chiropractic. He's a clear scoliosis specialist. So we both my kids have scoliosis. I think I shared that with you.
Sure. Yep.
And he has that same thing on his shirt about expecting miracles. So when you said that, it just kind of sparked.
Absolutely.
But you mentioned about the whole sleep thing.
Yeah.
Man, that's us, dude. Like that's literally. I mean, look, I sleep. When I fall asleep, I'm done. Like you can throw bombs next to me, and I'll be like,
I'm usually the same way unless my 5-year-old comes in.
and so we're at the stage where like my son is now 15, my daughter is 12, so they're self, they take care of themselves and whatnot. Yeah. So I'm dozed off, but I feel bad because my son now struggles with sleeping.
Sure.
And you could see so once we discovered he had scoliosis, and he was fine, and the kid slept fine. He was no big deal. But now that he wears a full-time brace, right?
Okay.
21 hours a day, so he doesn't sleep well.
Yeah.
So I feel terrible. And you could tell, you could see the difference prior. Now we know that this is helping him.
Sure.
I mean, he's improved a total of like 18 degrees or something like that. It's
awesome.
ridiculous. He was at 40. Now it's like, it's insane.
Yeah.
But we, and we know like this is kind of a thing that he has to walk through and there's no sleep, but I get that. And for kids, whether they're 5 or 15, I mean, heck, adults that don't get sleep are cranky all day, but I see it. Like he struggles to concentrate sometimes.
Yeah.
Or, and we're trying, and it's hard, right? As a parent. You were mentioning some of the parents will walk in, like looking at each other, like they're going to devour each other. I get that. I get that, man. Like, but, and then for them, I could totally put myself in their shoes because it's like, what's the line there? Like when do I attribute, my patience level, where do I need to take it to before I say this is being caused by the brace, or this is being caused by his scoliosis, or he's just a teenager. Like where's that fine line? Yeah. It's really hard to navigate.
It is. And I mean, we have parents that ask that all the time, and it's like, in your situation, right? You can't do much about the brace, but neurologically, where is he at? Is he able to kind of get out of this, because kids are inundated with technology now. I mean, both my kids have like Chromebooks and blue lights and all the things, right? And technology and all the things. So, kids are way more stimulated than they ever have been. And so, he's in a brace, but, is he able to unwind? We're finding a lot more kids, like they just can't unwind. They can't let go. Yeah. They're just like holding on to the day, and it's like, man, like, does your child do like shoulder shrugs all day? Because, and really I say that jokingly, but more neurologically and on a more serious note, it's because they're just so revved
Yeah.
Their brains are so on all the time. They're overstimulated.
Yeah.
And so, we
Yeah.
get a lot of parents though that are, they're already on the beaten path, right? They're
Mm.
eating, they're taking out the dyes, and they're taking out the gluten and the
Sure.
casein and all the
Yeah.
things. They're taking, the red dyes and all that.
Yeah.
And they're on all these therapies and supplements and whatnot. But
Mm-hmm.
I always tell people, I'm like, look, if neurology is not on board, you can take all that stuff out. And yes, that's definitely helpful. I'm not saying it's not. But if neurology is haywire, well, guess
Mm-hmm.
what? Digestion's off, gut's off, sleep's off, mental clarity is off, depression, is going to be at all-time high, anxiety, same thing. So it's
100%.
literally, it's one of these things where it's like, you got to look at neurology first. And, again, you can't do anything about the brace, but at the same time, you can do everything about where his neurology is and how that's functioning for him. So,
Absolutely. No, I agree wholeheartedly. Like there's a lot that we actually, I'm actually thinking about doing a podcast with just my kids and like literally just talking to them. Yeah, I'm actually really excited about that. My son's on board. My daughter's like, do I have to be on camera?
Yeah.
So and my son's the Broadway, he's a musician, like he's a rapper, like he's ready for it. My daughter not so much.
That's
but,
awesome.
But yeah, that I totally agree with what you just said. Like and they don't just, have their braces, like they have to do a Deneral, right? For their neck. They have to they have another thing very similar to a Deneral that goes on their side. They have this weird contraption that there's so much exercises that they have to do. To kind of keep their core strong, and then to manipulate the spine, of course. And then, like you said, like we try. Look, we're nowhere near perfect, but we try our best to be as organic as possible.
Sure.
We give them daily supplements, right? Like for their pain, we don't give them Advil or anything like that. We hate medication, so we try everything with natural approach. So, and because we've seen the difference too. And this is all attributed to my wife, I'm saying it like I'm doing it myself.
I get it. I mean, hey, kids.
I just say, what, babe? She goes, this. I go, okay.
We'll go get some ice cream.
Just saying. Anyway, but I totally get it. I totally get it.
Yeah. I mean, kids, it's kind of funny because I actually was just having this conversation the other day. Someone asked me, I was at a 40th birthday party and someone asked me, oh, what is it that you do? And I was like, oh, I'm a pediatric chiropractor. And like, why are you adjusting kids? And I was like, well, kids have more issues than we even know. They just don't know how to articulate it.
Yeah.
If they're too young, the only thing they can do is cry, right?
Yeah.
Or be unhappy or be unsettled, right? Or unsoothable. So, when we have advocates for them, we can actually uncover quite a bit. Like us adults, we just complain, right? Until somebody like finally tells us either one, hey, stop talking, or two, let's get you in to get some help, right?
Yeah, for sure.
So we gotta really look out for our little guys for sure.
100%. Well, I can literally talk about this topic all day, and I'm sure you can too. But I really want to cover other topics if that's okay. So if we can move on.
Absolutely.
I want to talk about some fun stuff here. Kind of the business aspect, the growth aspect of your practice. So True Source Chiropractic, right? Is that the name of your?
Yes, sir. True Source Chiropractic. Yep.
So it's known, and we, again, talked about this. You try to have this warm, right, inclusive environment, especially for those kids with sensory issues. And so how, and you talked about the lamps and the dimmable lights and all that. Is there something else that, like, how do you ensure, I would say, the practice feels welcoming for families and individuals, from diverse backgrounds, right? Because we're talking about those on the spectrum, and you're talking about, Amin walking in through your door that has, lower back pain and neck pain or whatever. So how do you how do you cater to both?
Yeah. I mean, we just had, we have some decompression patients like that have, spinal stenosis, or they've got, compressed disc or, lumbalgia or whatever. But then we also have pediatric patients, and, it's an interesting dichotomy, right? Because it's like, okay, on the one hand, you've got peds, prenatal, and pediatrics, right? And then on the other hand, you've got like back pain. And those are typically like your older patients. I mean, we have a few younger ones too, but, that being said, I think it's all in how you structure things and systems, right? If we're really going to talk nuts and bolts business, it has to do with, one, what is your intention? And two, how do you develop a system that is inclusive enough to have both demographics.
Mm.
We were on the fence on this probably about a year ago, and my office manager, Amanda, she's been absolutely phenomenal when it comes to implementation. I come up with an idea and she figures out a way to implement it.
Love
We
it.
do it together.
Yeah.
But I'd say one, get an implementer, but two, you know, you really have to develop systems around it. So our pediatric prenatal family side literally looks very different than how we do back pain, headaches, migraines. Our exam is completely different. And basically the report of findings, or basically the care plan presentation, is very different as well. With someone, you know, who's bringing their child in, you have to go way, way back in their history and their story and figure out where this really started. And a lot of times it starts with a traumatic birth and then, you know, so on and so forth. With back pain and things of that nature, sometimes there's an acute cause, but a lot of times it's just chronic, repetitive wear and tear. Oh, I sit for a living kind of deal. And I think for us is that we've got such a warm, inviting, you know, a team and staff that most people, when they walk in, they're like, there's something different about this place. I mean, you go on Google and you look at True Source Chiropractic on Google in Virginia Beach, and you're just seeing all these reviews. I mean, you know, I don't even know how many we have, but there's so many. It's like, feels like a family, feels like you're actually being cared about. And, you know, that's the biggest thing is people want to be heard and they want to be seen, not just come in with a clipboard and be like, oh, you know, don't even look up from your clipboard and you're just looking, you know, at this thing and you're just like, oh, you've got, you know, your kid's not sleeping at night. Okay, we're just going to put them on X, Y, and Z. No, they actually want to be like validated, right? And we want to validate them. We want to understand where they're coming from, because a lot of us are moms and dads in this office. So we've been there. We've had the struggles, and a lot of our staff started out as patients. And so that is, I think, the difference, as opposed to a facility that, you know, they've got that, you know, window where it's just like, I don't want to be bothered window, you know, you know, everyone knows what I'm talking about, right? Like,
I won't name names.
Yeah. Like the first question is like, all right, what's your insurance? Like,
Yeah.
Hi, how are you? Like, how's your day going?
My joint hurts. That's all I'm saying.
Exactly. So
What?
I think it's just all in your processes. Our day one, or our phone call is very warm and welcoming. We ask clarifying questions so that we know what's coming into the office and if we're even a good fit for them.
That's great
And
advice.
the second component is when they come into the office, that office tour, the warm, friendly environment. We're always playing like fun music. Like this time of year, I mean, it's December 6th. We're playing Christmas music.
Love it.
And it's like, I think Santa Claus has come and gone already. But we try to decorate the office. We got a Christmas tree in here. We've got holiday decorations.
That's so cool.
We've got a kids coloring station for the kiddos.
Nice.
Even parents and, you know, older siblings are starting to do it. We've got like a coloring wall for them where they can put their coloring up for display. We have like a little station where kids right now they can write letters to Santa, and then we just kind of like backslide it to mom and dad so they know what they want for Christmas. And, you know, really just being engaging, not just a chiro office, not just come in here, you know, get adjusted, you know, and leave. We try to make it a very engaging and a fun experience for kids. And we have patient appreciation days where we'll, you know, bring in some cookies and milk, or we'll do like a community event where out in the parking lot where we have other providers that we partner with that come in, and, you know, we're just, you know, hyping it up. We'll have a bounce house for the kids and all the things. So we just really try to, you know, not only give excellent care, but cater to what our patients truly need.
Yeah.
And when you do that, the response that you get from the community, because there's just not enough providers that care enough to do this stuff.
That's so true.
People want to feel part of community. We're built for community, right?
That's great.
So that being said, you're getting great care, but you're also part of an amazing community. It's honestly, it's not a rarity that we have patients that like kind of come in at the same time and they form friendships and start talking to each other.
That's so cool.
And they're like, oh yeah, we're doing a play date this weekend. And it's like, cool. We're
so
bridging
cool.
gaps in our community, which is absolutely amazing.
That is amazing.
Yeah.
That is amazing. So it's all these, you know, different things that you're doing within the community, but it sounds like you need an Amanda.
You need an Amanda. Yeah, for sure. Yeah, Amanda, I literally, it's kind of funny. I call her my work wife. I'm just like, every question that comes to me, it's like, run it through Amanda because, I literally, I cannot do it. Right.
Yeah.
She,
Yeah.
she is such, she actually started as a patient of mine, in a
Mm.
former clinic of mine. And then I was treating her, for a while. And then I took a little bit of a hiatus, and then she found me again, and she started bringing her son to me, and she started getting care. And at the time, her husband was getting care. And then out of the blue, I was sitting like watching football one day, probably about a year and a half ago. And she texted me, and she was in the real estate world. And literally, she was like, "Hey, like, I saw you put an ad out for a chiropractic assistant." I was like, "Uh-huh." And she's like, "I want it." And I was like, "You get paid way more than what I'm paying you,
Yeah.
or we'll be
Yeah.
paying you." And she's like, "I don't care." She's like, "I want out of the real estate business." And I was like,
Wow.
"Okay." I'm like,
Okay.
this is what the pay is." And she's like, "I'll take it." And I was like, "Okay."
Nice.
And that quickly transferred into, "Do you want to be an office manager?" And
Mm.
so, honestly, this practice would not be what it is without her.
That's so good. I
Because
love that.
again, we do team trips to trainings and things of that nature. And she's in there, one, mixing and mingling with other chiros, other office managers, but at the same time, she's taking notes on how do we implement all this stuff into our practice. And, she's been monumental and instrumental in getting this practice from, a really a 2-3 person business to now we have 7 employees, and we're serving at a much higher caliber and getting ready to hire an associate. So,
Mm.
she's honestly, I mean, I'm the chiropractor and I own the practice, but it wouldn't be the same without her for sure. So
Mm.
yes, you do need an Amanda.
You needed Amanda. Got it. Got it. Awesome. Good stuff. So, all right, let's talk a little bit about your website and kind
Sure.
of community engagement, right?
Yep. Yep.
Because it's clearly integral, right, to your
Yeah.
growth. Well, so what role has digital marketing, online presence
Sure.
really played in building trust with your practice members?
Yeah. So our website, we're currently in the kind of the revamping stage. Every business owner is like, "Yeah, I don't love my website," even if it's like amazing, right? But our website was built for ease and access, right?
Mm,
So, I want that mom or that dad who's searching at 1, 2 o'clock in the morning. I want them to be able to kind of quickly figure out what it is we're about, right? So right off the jump, it says, True Source Chiropractic, family, pediatrics, prenatal, all of those
mm-hmm.
things.
Yep.
And then we have tabs that kind of go right into it, right? I think that plays a monumental, because we honestly, every weekend we go home on a Friday night, and then come Monday morning, we've got, a couple messages in our inbox for people inquiring about appointments for their kiddo or what have
Yeah.
you. So
Yeah.
we have that going for us, but we also have the Pediatric Experience Directory, or PX directory. And what it is, just kind of, we're listed as a PX Pro because of our involvement with the pediatric experience, but how much
Mm-hmm.
training we've done, one
Mm-hmm.
individually as a chiro, but then also as a team.
Mm.
So we're on this directory, and a lot of moms, because of what PX is doing, they're doing a lot of marketing on TikTok, on Instagram. So what they do is they kind of allow parents to come in to learn about, neurologically based pediatric chiropractic,
Mm-hmm.
and then they funnel it to kind of regionally, right? So we have a lot of moms find us through that, or a lot of dads too find us through that. And then we're also on some neuro databases where people are like, "Yeah, I found you on this database looking for a neurologically based chiro."
Mm.
And so I think it's all about how you position yourself. If we're truly
Sure.
talking business and we're truly talking like, how do people find you, or
Mm-hmm.
ease, right? We do a lot of stuff on Instagram. Like, we make funny reels, we, do engaging posts, we do things about what our office and that day one experience is like, or day two, or how many kids we're seeing, or holiday, right now we're doing what's called the gift of health, where if you know somebody that you work with or something like that, you can give them a coupon, and how that gives back to a family who maybe can't afford care, right?
Mm.
So we try to make things as engaging
Mm.
as possible. And then, we just have fun with it, like, yes, people are coming in with very serious issues
Yeah.
for sure that are affecting the
Yeah.
quality of their life or their kid's life or what have you. but we also try to be very family oriented. And you can tell that when you go on our Instagram, you can tell like, okay, this is a fun place to be.
Mm-hmm.
Not just like,
It's welcoming.
exactly. It's
Yeah.
not just like the highlight reel. It's like, no,
Yeah.
this is truly who they are.
Yeah.
And so we try to have fun with it, but then we try to put out educational content and then also just community engagement. Like there's nothing like a good referral. And the only way you're getting that is if you treat people with respect and
That's right.
love and kindness and also professionalism and getting and moving, helping them move the needle and get out of that health challenge. So we get a lot of referrals, you know, people will refer their friends, their mom, their dad, and that's just awesome, you know?
Yeah.
So, and then we do a lot of community events as well. So we
Yeah.
try to get out in the community. Like tomorrow night, we're going to a doula event where there's going to be a bunch of pregnant moms and we're
Very cool.
talking about chiropractic. So,
Yeah.
you know, it's just, we try to be where we need to be when we need to be there. And, you know, that's how people find us, which is kind of awesome.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think it also, something that a lot of chiropractors miss, unfortunately. And so two things actually. One, you mentioned referrals. So I have a training out there specifically for chiropractors, free training. It's all out there, but referrals are so key because it's one of the most powerful connections a prospective patient will have to a practice because it's coming from a trusted source. Right. It's a friend, it's a mom, it's a brother, it's a neighbor. It's, you know, they're not going to blow smoke, excuse me, and just so that they can bring, it's literally comes from the heart. Say, hey, I think so-and-so can help you. You know, Dr. Josh does this and he can blah, blah, blah. So referrals are huge. And the way we come about those referrals, again, it's missed is they try so hard with their presence online and all these gimmicks and the sound videos and okay, those are great, those are fun, but you need to be yourself.
Exactly.
You be yourself, be natural, you know, post even like just, hey, popping in to say hello to the community kind of thing, you know, and people see that, you know, and they also see through the overdone, we'll call them social media posts.
Oh yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So,
especially when you're talking to there's lie detector tests and then there's mamas and you cannot fool a mama, right? Like it is not happening. She will literally see right through it. And, you know, if you're not authentically being you, or if you're pretending to be something that you're not, that's very evident, right? But at the same time, you know, there is a level of, you know, I can't get on there and just, you know, be a drone, you know, be like, oh, this is what we do. But at the same time, yes, you're absolutely right. Like there's nothing quite like a referral. There's nothing quite like that testimonial where we've actually started doing some video testimonials, like recording, you know, asking patients if they'd hop on a video so we can post it on socials. And, you know, quite honestly, you know, we have a sign in our office that's like, I think it's something to the effect of there's no better gift than a referral or something like that, or you entrusting us with your family or something to that effect. And it's true, you know, because when we get whole families in here, I mean, it's just awesome. But, you know, a lot of times people will come in not knowing one lick about chiropractic and they'll be like, yeah, so-and-so said I just need to come, you know, or my girlfriend said I need to come.
All right.
And, you know, and they end up being, you know, amazing patients that are just like, holy smokes, I didn't even know what it is you did, but I'm so glad and so grateful that so-and-so told me to come here. Because I feel like you are an answer to prayer, or you are going to help me, you know, overcome this challenge that has really been affecting my health and the quality of my life, you know? So
it's awesome.
Yeah, the world is your oyster, man. And honestly, you've got to be able to, you know, reach people where they are. And a lot of people are on social, but a lot of people, there's still an old school generation out there that just loves a good old fashioned, hey, this guy is really amazing, go see him. You know, you got to be there. And then again, it comes down to education. Like, what are you putting out there? I could put out a bunch of stuff, but if I'm not educating you on what we do, you're probably not going to come in, right? So, you know, I think when your heart's in the right place, and I mean, like, seriously, I mean, when we connected, like, you could tell your heart's such in the right place. When your heart's in the right place, that oozes from the very fiber of your being. And I firmly believe that. So, you know, for us, every single person that's hired here and works here, pediatric prenatal family care is what they're all about. and living the healthiest possible way, that they can. And we just want to share that, and so same with you, my man, is, we connected, and it's like, man, you've got quite the testimony and story too, so
well, thank
being
you for that.
authentically you.
Thank you for saying that. Thank you, really. So I did have 2 follow-up questions that you literally just answered.
Sorry, brother.
No, this is great conversation. I love it because I wanted to know a little bit more about kind of how you empower families and the balance between patient education. We've been talking about all that. I wanted to know about staying competitive, maybe innovative, right? Staying family focused. You've been touching on that left and right. So it's really cool. So brings me to unique offerings, right? So I think I read somewhere on your site about the Webster technique, and kind of advanced pediatric training.
Sure.
I wish I knew more about it, but how do you communicate these benefits, right, to maybe potential patients?
Yeah. For me, like, every opportunity is an opportunity to talk about chiropractic. And I think when you're passionate about what you do, that's not a weird thing to say.
Yeah.
I'll be on a boat, fishing with random strangers, and we'll have a whole hour of just, hey, this is what chiropractic is all about. But
you're stuck with me.
Yeah, you're stuck with me, man. Yeah. The shore's about 25 miles that way.
You can jump off, but I'm going to talk about chiropractic.
Yeah, exactly. You might need an adjustment if you jump out of this boat, but no. But I think for me, one, using every opportunity to talk about it, in the right time and space.
Yes, of course.
But that being said, I used to introduce myself as, and I promise I'll get back to this. I used to introduce myself as just a chiropractor. Oh, what do you do? I'm a chiropractor. And then what do you get? Like, oh, my neck hurts. My back hurts. Can you just adjust me right here on this bench, this bar stool? And I'm like, no, I can't. Right. And then as I started kind of doing some self-reflecting, what I say is I'm a pediatric, prenatal, and family chiropractor. That is neurologically based. And that really kind of takes away that, oh, my neck, oh, my back. And they're like, wait, what? And that opens the floor for conversation.
Yeah.
And so when you are kind of talking to people, it's really the unique offerings is, one, no one's ever heard of that. And two, now how you choose to explain that will really kind of set the foundation as to whether they think you're completely in left field and disconnected from like what is really happening with kids, or if like, man, you might be the guy that I need to send my niece, nephew, kid to, right? And so that being said, yeah, we do position ourselves in a way that doesn't make chiro weird, actually very applicable, but also neurologically based. So I have kind of a 5-minute little, spiel on, well, how the nervous system works and what kids are struggling with. But then, if I'm talking to a group of moms, I'm going to be talking more about, well, how are you guys feeling? If this is your first pregnancy, well, you really don't know what's about to happen to your body. You really don't know that in that third trimester, there's going to be a lot of shifting. There's going to be a lot of pelvic discomfort. And if that baby's breech, well, we need to right the ship. You can have a baby breech, but it's not ideal.
Sure.
And so that being said, well, what do the mechanics look like in terms of the uterus and uterine constriction?
Yeah.
What do the mechanics look like with the sacrum and the ilium, right? The hip bones. And how does the sacrotuberous ligament play into that, and the round ligament and the uterine ligament, right? How are all of those at play? And how do we create a more favorable, optimal birthing situation, both for you, but also for baby? When we do that, it's kind of a no-brainer. They're like, oh my gosh, no one's ever told me this. My OB just said, well, come into the, hospital one day and we'll get it out, whether it's a C-section or a vacuum extraction or, Pitocin or whatever it is. And it's like, well, really, we've got to start at foundational basics. What are your goals, right? Oh, well, I want to get out of pain because, I'm, in my second trimester and I'm hurting really bad.
Yeah.
Okay. What is the other goal? Well, I really want to have a successful delivery.
Right.
Okay. Well, are you planning on getting an epidural? Like, what is your game plan? So we get into that.
Yeah.
And then we tie in, you mentioned the Webster technique. Then we tie in how specific chiropractic care, aka especially for pregnancy, specific chiropractic care, the Webster technique really works at reducing the amount of uterine constraint that a baby feels. A baby is in kind of a muscular sac, the uterus. And when the baby gets bigger and the uterus is subsequently getting smaller, there's not a whole lot of wiggle room for that baby.
Right.
Well, what if we change the mechanics of the hips? What if we change the mechanics of how much tension is on the round ligament? Do you think that baby is able to flip into a more favorable position, engage into the pelvis, and now is ready to be birthed in a more natural way?
Yeah.
Yeah, I do.
That's so cool.
Yeah. So, and then we explain what that technique involves and why it's happening. We've got a workshop coming up just for pregnant moms in January, and it's what to expect when expecting.
Oh,
the
nice.
chiropractic version.
Yeah.
And so, I really,
it.
I try to kind of make workshops centered around these things because there's just not enough talking about it.
Yeah.
Most women, if you ask them, they're like, yeah, I don't know what my birth plan is. I'm just going to go in the hospital whenever my water breaks.
Yeah.
And it's like, well, if you do that, you're really setting yourself up for not the greatest experience. And most moms want as good of an experience as they can have. So we try to control the controllables, and we try to explain what it is that's happening to them, and then, create a care plan that's devised around that. So, I know these are long-winded answers, man,
No,
but,
this is great.
But at the same time, it's really just positioning yourself, because I've done so much education around pediatrics and prenatal and family care that it's really explaining to people who aren't being explained really anything. And that's where we try and set ourselves apart. So yeah, there might be another chiropractor. Actually, there is a chiropractor about right across the street. And there's another one, about a quarter mile down the road. But do they do what we do? Absolutely not, because education is first and foremost. The word doctor means teacher. And if you're not teaching, you're failing at your job. But then also delivering, good quality, neurologically based chiropractic care that gets results, but also moves the needle and people's health program. So
yeah. That's actually, so you led into the answer by saying how you had a mind shift, and you stopped saying that I'm a chiropractor, and then you kind of you have now your title that you've given yourself because of the work that you do and the change that you do and so on. So it's like pediatric chiropractic, etc. I get that. I get that so much, because I'm literally in that boat. I'm not officially changing lives, maybe by way of, growing chiropractic practices, right?
You're raising awareness.
but so like if somebody asks me what I do, I used to say, well, I'm a digital marketer for the chiropractic industry. And that was the end of the conversation. Because just like, unfortunately, if somebody says, well, I'm a chiropractor, there's this kind of, in some people's minds, this negative connotation that comes around being a chiropractor, which sucks so bad. But it's just, I'm in the same boat in a sense, because if I say I'm a digital marketer, well, it's almost like saying I'm a lawyer. It's like you're a sleazeball. But no. But I'm not. I really have a heart for this, and I started changing that. Now I don't say I'm a digital marketer. Now I'm a chiropractic growth expert. That's literally what I say.
Oh, I love that,
because that's really what I do, right? Yeah. So I get that when you changed from chiropractor to, okay, this is what I actually do. It's not one word.
Right.
I don't do one thing. I customize care for certain people in certain ways to get certain results. So I love that.
Oh, I like that.
I love that more than the rest of your answer, because it's all about a mindset change. It's big. It's a big part of it.
Yeah, I came out of chiropractic school, and I'm like, on fire, right? I'm ready to preach the chiropractic gospel, as it were. And I think the first couple professional meetings I had, I'm a chiropractor, and like, oh, you crack necks. And I'm like, I just went to school for a really long time. And it was a complete mind shift that had to happen, and really owning what it is you do and what sets you apart from the rest of the chiropractors, and really being able to kind of, not only in today's world, you got to defend everything, right? Because cancel culture is a big thing, but you got to be able to defend it, but also educate people at the same time. That's a skill. Yeah. That's something that was developed over the last 8 years. So,
yeah. So I'm going to throw another $1 million question at you.
Okay.
If you had to give one piece of advice to, chiropractors starting a new practice, what would it be?
I would say don't, because in chiropractic school, you're kind of, you think you know what you want to do. Be open-minded. Be open-minded and also own your craft. This is a craft. There's as much as it is science and research, this is an art. This is a science. This is a philosophy. It is all of those things. And you have to own your craft. And the only way to do that as a new chiropractor is, one, get excellent mentorship. And two, be very confident in who you are, who you're serving, and what you do.
That's good.
I feel like these $1 million questions, I'm like throwing multiple things in there.
You
but
are, and I'll forgive you for it, but that's fine. You're not playing the game that I want you to play, but it's all good.
Yeah, 3 million.
Whatever.
I think I got like 1.5. It's fine.
It's all good, man. It's good stuff. So let's get a little bit more detailed.
Sure.
All right. So let's talk a little bit about the chiropractic techniques, right? I'm sure some of these DCs out there are going to really appreciate this, right? So your certification in the Webster technique, and is it Graston technique? Am I saying that right?
Yeah. So Graston. It's a soft tissue technique. Yeah.
Okay. So do me a favor. Just highlight your dedication to that. Like, it's specialized care in my head, at least.
Absolutely.
I'm an outsider here, but how these kind of certifications enhance your practice and kind of your dedication to them?
Yeah. 1,000%. So, there's the Webster technique, which is geared more toward pregnancy. Dr. Webster came up with it, I believe in the 80s, and it's been very effective to help children get into a more optimal birthing position. Okay. But then we've got, the techniques that we learn in chiropractic school. You've got diversified, which is kind of the standard adjusting, where it's called an high velocity, low amplitude, or a HVLA adjusting.
Okay.
That's where, you've got somebody lying, face up on the table, and you gently adjust their neck or do a side posture adjustment. I use a myriad of techniques, right? So it's kind of like having tools without sounding too cliche, like having tools in your tool belt. I need a different tool depending on the job, right?
Understood.
And so when it comes to kids, and this is where people truly don't understand what we do, this is why the explanation has to happen and the teaching has to happen, is because people see what's on TikTok and on Instagram and Facebook, right? We've established that, but they think that that's what I'm doing to a child or to an infant. And that couldn't be further from the case, because when you're adjusting an infant, one, they're especially, a couple weeks old, their bones, right? Their actual spinal bones that house the nervous system have not ossified, meaning they haven't hardened, right? So that being said, it's less about, snap, crackle, and popping. And I hate saying that, but it's less about the manual adjustment and more about the tonal adjustment. So adjusting tone. A lot of kids very locked into this kind of fight, flight reflex, colic, right? Arching the back when they're crying and spitting up and all these things. It's because there's too much tone, right? How many times have you seen like a newborn baby and it's like the parents are just so proud, they're beaming, right? It's like, a 2-week-old, and it's like, oh, they can hold their head up already. And it's like, that's not a good thing. Right? There's way too much tone there, right? So that being said, I use several different techniques. There's Tolsky, which is more of a tonal adjusting.
Okay.
We use a little bit of network spinal, which is basically kind of tapping into energy systems of the nervous system and allowing them to release on their own. There's MC2. It sounds like an algebra equation, but it's more tonal as well.
Okay.
But then if I have like an adult or something like that who maybe is struggling with anxiety, I might go back to those same techniques that I'm using on a child. Okay. Or if I have someone that literally has kind of a disc issue, well, I might use a Thompson drop or a Gonstead or a diversified. So I have a lot of these tools, and that's probably the hardest part about my job, is like figuring out, well, which one do you use for what and when, right? And that's why, our exam process is built in such a way that it examines the nervous system, and I can see are they shifted into kind of this fight, flight, primitive reflex, holding on to all these things, and I need to release them from that? Or are they kind of shifted over into this super parasympathetic exhaustion mode where their body is just drained, and now I've got to kind of add a spark into that nervous system to kind of upregulate it a little bit more? Or is it just, someone woke up on the wrong side of the bed or the wrong side of the pillow, and they're like, man, my neck is just not going to move. Well, now do I maybe use some soft tissue techniques to loosen them up, and then just a gentle adjustment or a drop adjustment or an arthro-stem adjustment? It really just depends. And so when people are like, oh, I know what you do, and I'm like, that's really interesting, because there were days where I didn't even know what I did.
Yeah. No, I get that.
So,
yeah.
That's so good. There's a lot of tools in that, and I don't necessarily market all of them, like on, my website or on Instagram, but we do talk about them when I'm doing a report with a patient. I'm like, look, there are going to be some days where it almost feels like I do nothing with your child or with you. And there's some days where it's like, okay, it's a little bit more, he did a little bit more HVLA, high velocity, low amplitude adjusting, your standard traditional adjusting. It really just depends on, one, scans, and two, what is the tone of your body doing? A lot of times with kids, we will do 3 or 4 sessions or 3 or 4 adjustments in the same area. We have what's called like we kind of classify our kids a little bit. We don't use diagnoses, but we do classify them. Like if this is a raging bull, meaning if this kid is like very fiery and like really stuck and, goes 0 to 100, well, that kid needs more tonal work initially, and then we can do some more adjusting lower. And when I say tonal work, I mean really in the upper cervical complex. We need to calm that down, stimulating the vagus nerve. If they are more of a drunken bull and, kind of clumsy and 2 left feet and running into doors and stuff like that, or maybe missing gross motor or fine motor, well, then maybe they need a little bit more oomph into that adjustment. So we'll use a little bit more scoops or, HVLA adjusting, where we're only targeting one segment. I think the misnomer about chiropractic is like, oh, you come in, you lay down and you get, adjusted from head to toe. We call it the flying 7 in our profession. That doesn't happen in our office. We are very specific. And we use what's called the Insight scans. It's a technology that shows me where the stress is located, shows me how much neurologic tension they have, and then also it shows me what is the state of their nervous system. Are they in protection mode?
Right.
Or are they in kind of a exhaustion mode? So it just depends on what they've got, and so having all those tools, it's probably why I have, so much gray hair, but, because you have to learn all of these things and be very fluid in them. But at the same time, it's necessary for the work that we do.
Yeah, that's good. You mentioned upper cervical. I was just interviewing this gentleman, Dr. Sean, in Simi Valley out in California. His son had cerebral palsy.
Yeah.
And when he was born, long story short, actually, once that's posted, I'll send that to you so you can watch it. It's kind of cool story. But
that'd be great.
They went from him not essentially being able to do anything. Like they pretty much gave him a death sentence, which is ridiculous to me. I hate the medical profession when they do that. They did it with my own daughter, but they he took him to, again, long story, a gentleman who did specialize in that with the upper cervical adjustments and what have you. And that, I think that same day they were in the car ride home, the way he used to hold his bottle was like this. So like one fist against the bottle and one hand. He didn't open this hand. When they were driving home after his first adjustment, he was holding his bottle.
Wow.
With that hand. I'm getting chills again. I got chills when he told me the story.
Yeah.
But yeah, so you were talking about that. It sparked that. But yeah, it's so awesome. Kind of.
It's truly miraculous. I mean, there's so many things that upper cervically, I mean, that is one of the most important areas. I always kind of make the analogy, if you break your like low back, right? Like you do something, fall off a trampoline or something, and you like break a vertebrae in your low back or something like that. What's more impactful, right? If you break a vertebrae in your low back, or if you like broke a vertebrae in your neck, right?
I would say neck, no?
Yeah, because you have so much more going on up there, right? And it's close to the brainstem, and so that's the reason why upper cervical chiropractic is so important. is because there's so much signaling that
Mm.
goes from just the muscles of the occiput that connect to C1, C2, but then also where do all the signals end up? Whether they're coming from your gut, your feet, wherever, they end up having to channel through there. Okay. So that area is full of neurons that go
Yeah.
into the brain, go into the cerebellum and the balance coordination center, and then that's just, spread and broadcast
Sure.
throughout the brain of where it needs to go. So
Yeah.
yeah, upper cervical chiropractic I've seen some pretty awesome miracle stories with those.
Yeah, man, that's so cool.
Yeah.
Are you seeing any like new up and coming exciting developments in chiropractic care, like for families or whatever, prenatal, pediatric? Are you seeing anything new on the horizon?
Yeah, I am. When we kind of first started, like chiropractic was like super fringe, It was like kind of like my original story, or how I got into it. I'm like, I just don't know about that.
Yeah.
But I think with social media and I think with educational platforms, with like your podcast, like I think that there's becoming more of we're becoming more the norm, not the exception now. And I think what's interesting is there's a massive shift, especially in the pediatric and prenatal world. There's a massive shift away from medicine.
Love it.
It really started, and not to get too whatever, but it really started at COVID. People were like, what in the world, and the lack of faith or trust or whatever in what we deem our healthcare system here in the United States is really just kind of taking a back seat. And people are looking for alternatives. They're looking for other answers.
Yeah.
And, I think the medical community will always be fine because, of, drugs and things of that nature. But at the same time, like there is a massive movement shift into more holistic, shopping the fringe of the stores, finding raw milk, finding, cow shares. And then also, well, how do we regulate nervous systems? How do we, get better sleep? How do we breathe better? All of these things, because quite honestly, people are just over it. They're seeing that other countries that are less developed are living healthier than us. And they're just like, what in the world?
Yeah.
So
the interview I just did with Dr. Justin, the scoliosis specialist, he made actually a comment that, so I was knocking the medical industry.
Yeah.
Then he said, we have the best medical industry in all of the world. And I was taken back by what he said. He's like, if you gash your leg open, if you, sever, don't come to me.
Right.
Go to one of the best medical, whatever. So we have these medical, but it's not that anymore. It's not just about, whatever, my bone is sticking out of my arm or whatever. It's not about that. And it's all being pushed in ways of, yes, we have a great medical industry when it comes to that. And,
like acute care.
Yeah. But, when we start talking about sinuses and things like that, why are we going straight there? Why are we, like, I've seen my own sinuses improve from the adjustments that I got and things like that. So like people don't see that, but you're right. Because of social media, because of, people just kind of sharing their story and sometimes sharing a little too much, if you ask me, but then that's another podcast.
Stay tuned next week.
Tune in next week to some of the things I've been hearing. But yeah, it's becoming more of the norm than the exception, which is awesome.
It is. I actually saw something the other day. It was something about grocery stores, and it was like, if a grocery store has a health food section, what does that make the rest of the grocery store? It's like, I've never thought about that. Like I shop at like Wegmans and like Fresh Market, and I'm like, that's interesting. I never thought about that, but you're absolutely right. I mean, acute care, if you sever an artery or, have a heart attack or something like that acutely, for sure.
Yeah.
We've got you. But, I see more and more patients that are like, I went to my primary care and it's like, I've had this long-standing cough, whatever. And they're like, I told them I don't want medicine. And then just looked at me and like, well, we can't help you. I'm like, well, doesn't that just make them like a glorified drug dealer? Like,
right.
I mean, maybe not.
Maybe.
I don't know. But it's sad that that's what our community or our, health system has come to. But at the same time, it is a reality for a lot of folks. A lot of people just don't want to be on medicine. So
that's true. So I do have another $1 million question, but I'm afraid you're not going to be able to do it again.
We're going to be up to 2 million, 1.5 and 2.
We're going to try. We're going to try. We're going to try. So what's one thing that you wish the general public kind of better understood about chiropractic care?
Less chiropractic care is not explicitly about adjusting bones. Chiropractic care at the very basic level is trying to affect neurology to improve a outcome of health.
Great answer. Really great answer.
Yeah.
Really great answer.
So
We've been talking for quite a while here, man. This is good stuff. So
I really can't believe this is I love having conversations. I could talk for days about this stuff.
Time definitely flew by, man. This is really good stuff.
Yeah.
So let's wind down a little bit.
Sure.
So we'll talk a little bit about kind of maybe get a little personal again, right? Because you have a journey, right?
Yep.
And it involves both, your professional accolades and all that.
Yeah.
How do you balance like those achievements? Like, what was the award that you achieved? Is it James?
The James Burkle Award.
James Burkle Award.
Yeah.
And, all that, and you have obviously you work
Yeah.
on yourself personally. You have personal growth. You talk about your mindset, right? How do you balance those achievements,
Mhm.
right, with being kind of hands-on and a community member? Because I've seen, and I hate that this is true, but I've seen people in your seat specifically that have all these awards and diplomas, and then they put themselves on this
pedestal.
How do you balance that?
Yeah. We have, as an office and individually, received a lot of awards. We just won Best of the Beach, the gold, for our office. Like,
Nice.
I mean, it's like top doctor in the office, top 40 under 40, all of these great things, right? Those are just accolades. I think that, my faith and my identity, and if I'm allowed to say this, like, my identity in Christ is really at the very essence of who I am.
Love it.
I was called to do this work. And the reason that I know that is because, again, when my mom was sick and then unfortunately passed away when I was 19, I made a promise to her that I would do whatever in my power to help others who were sick or struggling. And so I think that the accolades and awards are just a reflection of what you already are intrinsically. And if you let those things kind of get to your head, I think you lose your purpose and you lose your way. And humility goes a long way. Quite honestly, I don't really need recognition. I don't want it. I'm naturally an introvert. I really choose not to be in the limelight if I could.
Yeah.
But I was just having a conversation with a friend of mine who lives in Richmond, Virginia. And she kind of said, "Man, you're famous." And I'm like, that's not the point. Like, she's, I was telling her about doing this podcast, and I was telling her about, some other speaking engagements that I have. The point is not about me. The point is about that kid and that mom and that dad who are struggling and don't have any answers and are literally crying themselves to sleep at night because they're tucked in bed with their kid who's, having a traumatic breakdown or episode, or maybe, they, don't get along in school, and parents kind of like us are like, what do we do with our kids? We're full-time working. What do we do with them? So I think for me, it boils down to having a humble heart.
Yeah.
And, when I was in chiropractic school, we used to go to these like philosophy nights called dynamic, like DE seminars. And they were at Life University in Georgia, and really cool. But the one thing that kind of stuck with me is the saying that they all said, everyone who attended this thing, and I kind of adopted that, is to love, give, and serve out of your own abundance without the expectation of return. That is the essence of what this place is about. And we want to love on people. We want to serve people, but man, do we want to move the needle in their healthcare. And that's what we're trying to do. And, do we get it right all the time? No. But at the same time, our heart is in the right place. Our clinical excellence is always in the right place. And so, I think accolades are just kind of a little bit of a reflection of what you're already doing, but just announcing it to the public.
Yeah.
So
That's so
that being
good.
said, I think just keeping a humble heart and keeping your faith at the center and keeping Christ centered and just being a servant leader in the community is really what it boils down
I
to.
love it. I love it. Servant
Yep.
leadership, man, that is, if everybody just understood what that was in every field, whether it be corporate environment or, I mean, just when you serve the people that work with you, that work for you, that work around you, everything changes.
Yeah.
Everything changes. So I love that you said that. Servant leadership is huge. It's huge.
Yeah. Yeah. I had a conversation with Amanda. Everyone needs an Amanda, remember? But I had a conversation with her and she was like, you don't really like stress about like finances and stuff like you used to in our office. I'm like, I think when you focus on finances and when you focus on, oh my gosh, we're going to hit this number this month or whatever, I think you really kind of do yourself a disservice because when you're more patient-centered, it comes. People are coming in droves.
Yeah.
We're booked out through January,
So good. I love that.
Yeah.
I love that. That's so good, man. Thank you. Great answer. Really great answer.
Yeah.
So obviously, family, and Jesus is clearly important to you.
Yeah.
How does your, personal life really inspire, shape the care that you provide at your practice? Because, you talked about it, servant leadership and things like that. It obviously changes the way we interact with the people in front of us. It doesn't matter if you're a chiropractor, if whatever you're doing, your beliefs, your root, whatever it may be, will really be reflected in the way you interact with those around you. So how do you feel like it, that really shapes your care?
Yeah. I mean, I got into this because of my son, and, every conversation that I have in here, if we have a kid, it's, I'm going to care for your child the way that I would care for my kid. And, parents, again, moms, they're like lie detectors. They can tell when you're being sincere and they can tell when you're like kind of full of it. And, when I say that and I look at them and I put my hand, maybe on their knee or on their kid or something like that, and it's like, look, we've got you. We hear you. We've got you. And we're going to move the needle for you. Parents are like, please, and I think when you kind of have that sincere, again, servant heart, that speaks volumes. But, the way that, my family dynamic and my professional dynamic kind of interplay, quite honestly, is, it's helping me be a better parent. It's helping me be a better partner. It's helping me be, something that I've always wanted to be. But I think through serving and seeing other people and having their struggles, there's, obviously they're here for care, but I'm a human too. Yeah. And so when I look and see their struggles, it's like, oh, my life ain't that bad. Yeah. I'm obviously going to help them, I'm going to, move the needle for them. But at the same time, it's like, man, I have so much to be grateful for. And that being said, the way that I, interact with my family has really changed over the last year and a half. I'm a parent, right? I'm a dad of 2 boys, right? So a lot more patient and a lot more understanding than I ever have been. And, whether you chalk that up to time and age or whether you chalk that up to maturity or, what we're doing in here, I think that when there's no congruency, right, from how you live personally and how you kind of come across professionally or how you do things professionally, I think there's going to be some conflicts interpersonally. And so I try to mirror the two as best I can. Am I perfect? No. But at the same time, there's this practice has shown me, one, there's so much to be grateful for, but two, that congruency in life is everything. And again, going back to my faith system, it's something that we here at True Source, we're all about is that, you have to have whatever it is, you have to have a faith-based system because quite honestly, life gets hard and it gets hard to be a provider sometimes. It gets hard to be a dad. It gets hard to be all these things. But if your faith is at the core of all of it, there's nothing you can't handle.
Yeah, that's good. Yeah. That's good. You've touched, I'm going to turn this into $1 million question. See how you deal with it. How has being a dad really shaped your perspective on, what families truly need from a chiropractor?
Yeah. I think that being a parent gives you insight into what the actual struggles are. And I think that, from my vantage point and being a dad of two boys that are amazing kids, love them to death, Jackson and Jude, it really has kind of opened my eyes to how invested parents are. Because before I had kids, I didn't know. My parents would tell me, "Oh, I love you," and I'm like, "Do you? I don't really know."
Yeah.
But once you hold that baby for the first time, that's yours. You're like, holy smokes! Like I felt my heart swell when I first held my child, my firstborn, and then obviously my second. And understanding what that love, that true like agape love feels like.
Yeah.
When I go into an exam room with a mom or with a dad and watching them break down in tears or watching them like struggle with their kid, I'm like, that's their world. And it is, they're entrusting me to take care of their baby.
Yeah.
Well, I know how I am with my baby, and I'm like a protective, Papa Bear here. So
I get it.
That being said, I think it allows me to soften, pretty gruff appearance here, bearded guy. I'm a big guy. I'm 6'1", 220 pounds. I can be a little intimidating, but
Yeah.
it allows me to kind of get real guttural, real on gut level, mom gut, dad gut. And we can just talk where they understand where I'm coming from, but even more importantly, I understand where they're coming from and, and what the real health challenges are for them or for their kids. Right. So, I think it's just helped me to be a better provider and to really listen, because there's just not enough of that. There's not enough listening. It's just like, oh, come in, check a box and then, off you go. But I think it's really helped me to, listen to their dad or their mom gut, and they're just telling me something's not right. I just feel it. I don't know what, but something's not right. And it's like, okay, let's investigate that, And so it helps me to be a better clinician. But also a better employer, a better, coworker, a better, friend, a better dad. So it really is a 360-degree transformation. It's not just any one thing. It's every facet of my life that has changed.
That's great. That's so great. Wow. Okay, man. This has been some good stuff. So let's wind it down a little bit. So your practice recently moved, am I right? You're in a new location?
We did.
Okay.
To a bigger location.
Excuse me. Sorry. I'll get it right next time. I apologize. You're in a bigger location. But that's great. Does that bring up any, opportunities for you being there? Or?
It does. Yeah. I mean, where we are in Virginia Beach, we're right in town center.
Okay.
And so it's kind of like the hub. We're not too far to the beach. We're not too east. We're not too west. We're right in the middle. And so it allows people we have what's called the 7 cities here: Chesapeake, Hampton, Norfolk, Virginia Beach, Portsmouth, and Suffolk. And so people are able to come from all around.
Nice.
And we're pretty centrally located. We're about 1.5 miles off the interstate.
Okay.
Almost 2. And so,
off
81
or 95?
So off of 264.
264?
264, yeah. So it's a east-west, I think north-south are odds and east-west are evens or something like that.
Okay.
Don't quote me on that. But that being said, we are very centrally located.
Nice.
And so we went from a building of barely 1,000 square feet, probably more like 1,100.
Okay.
And now we're in a 2,100 square foot facility, and we're getting ready to expand to an additional 1,100 square feet next to us.
Nice.
So, the need is there, but also what this has allowed us to do is it's allowed us to host events for other practitioners. They're not necessarily chiropractors, but we host speaking engagements here, educational engagements. Yeah, we try to partner. We have what's called community partners or partnering providers.
Yeah.
And so people who are along the same headspace as us, when it comes to health. I mean, we had a holistic OB come in and talk about pelvic floor health. Yeah.
Wow.
To moms it was a packed house. I mean, for moms that are having pelvic floor issues, or, we'll have PTs and OTs come in and do some communications with parents, or community groups, or we'll do workshops. So It really is kind of a community office. It's not just a chiropractic office. And,
Right.
so we're getting ready to expand to an additional 1,100 square feet, which is great.
Yeah.
But we're going to bring in a myofascial therapist that, does work on fascia. But then also we're going to be having, hopefully we're going to have an in-house like yoga person, I think, for like moms groups and stuff. So really
cool.
trying to create a wellness collective. In the bottom of our logo, it's True Source Chiropractic at the top. At the bottom, it says a wellness collective.
Nice.
Because we really value other providers, because it's not just chiropractic or bust. There's a lot of things that go into health.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
we just have to really focus on neurology first, and then other things can happen. Right.
Yeah. So for those listening, right, who maybe now that they've heard what you had to say,
sure,
maybe considering chiropractic care for their family, how can they get started with you?
Absolutely. So you can go to our website, www.truesourcechiropractic.net. You can Google us, True Source Chiropractic in Virginia Beach. Either way, there's going to be a link where it's, I think it says like get started now, or, book an appointment, and you can send in just a request for us to call you, and we will have a conversation with you. More commonly, what we see is people who message us on Instagram and Facebook. So our Instagram handle is at True Source Chiropractic. And then our Facebook page is True Source Chiropractic, Virginia Beach. So you can find us on social media platforms, the Instagram and Facebook, but also our website. And then, you can do it the old fashioned way and just give us a call or text 757-937-3558.
And I'll try to put that on the screen too.
That's our office number. We have a text and a call line, so you can call that number. You can also text that number and say, hey, I'm interested in, what you guys offer and what you do. So there's a lot of ways to contact us, or you can just stop in. We always give office tours, and we'd love to, kind of show you guys around. And then we do, on our Instagram, we do a lot of kind of prepping for workshops that we have. So the next workshop that we have is going to be on January 14th. And it's going to be what to expect when expecting the chiropractic version. Yep. And so that's one built for moms, but we have a lot of workshops like, Kick the Sick, or Raising Healthy Kids, or The Perfect Storm. So we have a ton of opportunities for people to come in and just take a look around and see if this is a good fit for them. And if they're still unsure, give us a call, and I'll give you a call, and we can do a consult over the phone.
Nice. Very cool. So you mentioned the expansion, and bringing in some other, practitioners and people in different fields. Is that what's next for True Source? Is there something else on the horizon that you want to share?
Oh, yeah. So for us, the ultimate goal for us is to have a location in every part of the 7 cities.
That is a hefty goal, my friend. That's awesome.
It is a very big goal, right?
Wow.
So our goal is to get True Source Virginia Beach, this current office, to get True Source Virginia Beach launched, locked and loaded. It's just kind of, taking care of all the families, all the kids, all the moms, all the things, right?
Yeah.
And then my next goal is to actually make my way up to the peninsula, which is just this Hampton and Newport News area. I'd like to put an office up there so that, people up there don't have to cross the Chesapeake or the Hampton Roads Bridge Tunnel because that is kind of a hiccup for a lot of people. But the ultimate goal, it's not so much about, oh my gosh, I want my name franchise all over the place. No, it's not that. I can see that. It's about being accessible to everyone. And, we have people coming down from Maryland. We have people coming up from North Carolina and everywhere in between. I just want to have more access for people so that they can get the care that they deserve. So, this is kind of, this is our first year and a half. We're coming up on 2 years. And we've just exploded in Virginia Beach. And so, I'm getting ready to hire an associate here. And so that will help kind of offload some things for us to kind of expand a little bit more.
Yeah. All right. So let me close with $1 million question. You mind?
No, not at all.
All right. Let's see if you can do it.
See if I can do it. I believe in the last one. Yeah.
I believe in you, Dr. Josh. So if a listener could take away one message, about family health and chiropractic care, what would it be? Now, I made it easy for you because I said message, so you
Sure.
could be creative.
A little bit creative, yeah.
Go for it.
So Hippocrates, the father of modern medicine, is quoted as saying, "Look well to the spine for the cause of dis-ease." What he really meant in that was the root causes of a lot of challenges, whether it is dysfunction, disconnection, or something in between, always lies within the nervous system. A dysregulated, disconnected nervous system will almost always be at the root source of some type of dysfunction. Our job as chiropractors, and more specifically, our job as neurologically based chiropractors who specialize in pediatrics, prenatal, and family, is to take a nervous system that is completely dysregulated, that is completely overwhelmed and overrun and struggling, and get it back to the way that God originally designed it, where kids are thriving, they are eating, they are sleeping, they are using the bathroom, and they are doing all the functions that are necessary for kids to thrive in life. And when a child is able to do that, that is when true health is actually achieved.
It's awesome. Great answer. Great job. Great job. Yeah. I'll give you another point for that one. So you did good. That's awesome.
$1.5 million question.
That's great. Well, Dr. Josh, really, really enjoyed our time together. Thank you so much for your insight and really spending the time with me. And I look forward to doing this again in the future with you, man.
Oh, absolutely. Bigger and better things on the horizon, my man. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you.
Absolutely.